This podcast is part of the Heartifact Podcast Network. For more of this and our other podcasts, head to heartifactstudios.com.au.
Welcome back to Australia Mania for our 100th episode. I'm your host, Ricki, as always, joined by David Yang.
Good moment. 100.
Yep.
Yo, it's 100 for you. It's not 100 for me.
Well, it's not 100 for me either because I've not come to a couple of episodes.
Oh, you know, then it's not even 100 for Michael either. Because
Yeah,
he's not even here
It's
tonight.
It's 100 for none of us, but it's 100 collective.
It's 100 for Australia
I
Mania.
mean, you weren't even here for the first 70.
Well, that's what I'm about to say. That's literally what I was saying. It's like I wasn't here for like the first half.
Yeah.
Right? But this pod didn't really pick up until the second, okay?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
We're only
But
just getting started.
It is 100 episodes, and we are kicking things off with this podcast with something very, very special.
Yo, this is huge. And if you're listening to it, I guess you already know. It's in the title.
It is. I was not privy to this, unfortunately, but both David and Michael, who Michael is at work again, our schedules are terrible at the moment because it's a very busy time of the year. David and Michael got to interview someone very, very special, and we're going to play that interview for you in just a moment. But would you like to intro who we got to talk to this week for the 100th episode of Australia Mania?
He has got to be the most underappreciated mind in the history of professional wrestling.
It's a big call.
This man, with the company on his shoulders, carried them to 83 weeks, beating head-to-head Monday Night Raw in the rankings, television rankings. He is none other than, is it the Big Easy?
Yeah.
Eric fucking Bischoff.
Yes.
Eric Bischoff.
Yes.
Play the interview.
All right, let's do that. We'll roll the interview.
Well, as we said off the top of the show here, Yang, this is episode 100. We've finally reached the triple figures of the Australian Mania podcast, and what a treat we get as we probably get one of the most, probably the biggest name in the history of pro wrestling. Join us to discuss his distinguishing career over 3 decades, as well as his new podcast, which is coming to Melbourne, Brisbane and Sydney for a Q&A session late June as well, which we'll put all our links up on our social media. It's titled 83 Weeks, and we are joined by Easy E himself, Eric Bischoff. Eric, good day to you, and welcome to the podcast.
Good moment.
Thank you very much, guys. It's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate it very much.
And I might as well start up with, you're going to be bringing the 83-week tour to Australia, and what does it mean coming down under to tell your stories from your 30 years in pro wrestling?
Well, first of all, I think Australian wrestling fans are some of the most knowledgeable wrestling fans and loyal wrestling fans anywhere in the world. There's a few places around the world that are where, for example, in Montreal and Toronto are 2 good examples. New York City, obviously, is another good example, where wrestling fans, for whatever reason, are just so loyal and so knowledgeable and respectful of the business that it makes it a pleasure for someone like me to come and spend time with them and share stories and tell jokes and really get into the business of the wrestling business, which is what our show's all about.
And the title of it is very synonymous for the reason is because at one point in time, as executive producer and the head honcho of World Championship Wrestling, you are still probably the only man who's beaten, you are the only man who's beaten Vince McMahon in the ratings. And for a lot of people like us as well, for myself and for Yang, we've grown up watching these documentaries and watched like reruns and all that. What do you think made WCW so successful that more people were tuning to that product over the WWE in that mid-90s era when you were just dominating the ratings?
Well, I think if you were going to do a research paper and you went back in time and you looked at the WWF in 1993, 94, 95, even in 96, the WWF or WWE wrestling product was really very much geared towards children. The characters were very cartoonish type characters. All the characters were either garbage men or crazy dentists or, midget clowns or pirates or firemen. And if you go back and look at what we started doing in 1995, is we started telling more realistic stories or reality-based stories that was targeted not towards kids that were 10, 12, and 14 years old like the WWF was, but we were targeting our stories and our characters, for the most part, so that they would be appealing to 18 to 25, 25 to 54-year-old men. And that was an audience that was underserved by the WWF because they were so focused on the children's audience. I think that's probably what, overall, in a general sense, that was really the big turning point for us.
Awesome. Just really quickly before I jump into my question, I just want to say, Eric, that you might actually be the most underappreciated wrestling mind in the history of the world. And I just feel like I needed to say that to you. I'm a huge fan. But while we jump into that...
Thank you very much.
Oh, genuinely the most underappreciated mind. Like, the way your brain works when it comes to the psychology of wrestling, it is unmatched. Unmatched, in my opinion. But it's brilliant that you touched on like just your experience with how you handled booking WCW in that time, because what I find most fascinating about your career is particularly the early stages of it. So you had like several jobs before you managed to find your place at, I think it was American Wrestling Association. And even then you started in sales, is from what I've read. And then your career took you to on-screen talent, and then you became a lead writer, and then eventually, obviously, president of one of the biggest wrestling companies that we've ever seen. Is this how you had always seen your career kind of pan out that way? Had it always been wrestling was your final destination?
You know what's really ironic is I never thought for a moment that I would ever get a job in professional wrestling. I didn't aspire to get a job in professional wrestling. Even though I was a wrestling fan, the idea of me somehow ending up in the wrestling business was just such a foreign concept to me. I was a sales manager for a food processor when one day I walked into Vern Gagne's office to talk about another business deal, and because he liked my approach and he felt like I had good energy or whatever he thought, he offered me a job out of the blue. I didn't expect it. I didn't aspire to it. I didn't plan for it. It just kind of happened. And then once I got there, because the AWA was a relatively small company, I had the opportunity to learn every aspect of the wrestling business. When I was on the sales side of things, I learned a lot about television advertising. I learned about sponsorships and how to structure them. I learned about, increasing the distribution for a television show and the ways and means to do that. So I got to learn all of that, and then because I was fascinated with how television is actually produced. And, I'm a product of the 60s. I was born in 1955. Television was still relatively new in my neighborhood. Not everybody in my neighborhood even had a television. And those that did only had one, and it was black and white. And it was the television was the center of the family's universe back in the 50s and the 60s. Everybody had one. And by the time I got a chance to go to work for Vern Gagne, by that time I was in my early 30s, I still didn't know how television worked. It's a lot like a microwave oven. Everyone has one. Nobody can tell you how it actually works.
That's so true.
And that's the way I felt the same way about television. Is everybody has a television. It was, but by the time I had an opportunity to get a job in television, everybody has one. I have no idea how it works, and I want to learn that. So I had the opportunity with Vern Gagne to learn production and post-production. I learned how to edit. I learned how to film television. I learned how to direct television inside of live television inside a production truck. I learned how to promote live events. So I was able to touch all the various facets of the wrestling industry because of my proximity to them in a small company in Minneapolis, which really set me up perfectly later on when the opportunity came along, for an executive producer and then eventually the president of WCW, because I had such a broad base of experience. And it was all coincidence. I didn't plan on it, but it was because I had such a broad base of experience. I was probably one of the most qualified people in the country to kind of be in the position I was in when I was in it. Just
like on top of that, so obviously you you credit a lot of your experience business-wise to AWA and then preceding the like WCW. But who do you credit your psychological mind? So how you went about preparing stories, because you're one of the like, as I said before, like the finest I've seen when it comes to, all right, we're going to book it this way because steps 5, 6, and 7 are panned out in my head. Whereas a lot of bookers, they look at it and they go, all right, we understand what this finish is, and then it's only steps 1, 2, and 3. But you had such a long-term mind when it came to the reasons we make decisions. Was that just something that you had intuitively yourself growing up as a wrestling fan, that you always wanted to see this psychology play out in their head? Or was it something that someone had taught you to be like, no, appreciate the psychology behind wrestling? While business is one thing, psychology and the storytelling is what we can really draw people in with. And to me, it's what you understood the most. Was that someone that you learned from, or was that just who you were?
No, it was just who I was, number one, but I think it was more, it's not that it came so naturally to me, but over the course of time and having been exposed to different ways of doing things, and again, working for Vern Gagne, and I think Vern Gagne, most people who worked with him will tell you from a psychology point of view, Vern Gagne probably had a better understanding of the wrestling business than almost any promoter around in his generation. And I got to work with him. So I got to be that fly on the wall. As I was running the camera, for example, during a production day, I'm listening to Vern direct talent. I'm learning from a guy who was really one of the best there was at what he did, and that was my first kind of introduction to psychology. Now, that didn't mean I was able to just automatically apply what I had learned, after working, for Vern and beginning to get a glimpse of, not only with Vern, from veteran guys like Ray Stevens, Pat Patterson, Wahoo McDaniel, other really legendary names in the business who, they had, by the time I was being exposed to them, they had been in the business for 40 years in some cases. So that was a lot of knowledge I was able to just, because of sheer proximity, absorb. But then later on is my responsibility to start crafting stories or approving stories that other people crafted. There's a trial and error. I learned by a lot of mistakes. I saw a lot of things, and improved a lot of things to happen that were really horrible, creatively speaking. So, you kind of throw out all the bad ideas or throw out the bad formulas and come up with good formulas. And, over time I learned how to apply some of the psychology, the basic psychology that I learned working for Vern. What's really interesting is at this late stage in my life, I'm stepping into another kind of endeavor in the feature film business, and I find myself having to learn and wanting to learn a lot more about a more refined storytelling structure. And I was pointed to a gentleman by the name of Joe Campbell, who wrote a book called The Hero's Journey. You can find it on YouTube. And Joseph Campbell breaks down the storytelling process in a way I've never heard anybody do it before. But as I'm reading about him and I'm watching a lot of the documentaries about his, and he's long since passed, so he died a long time ago, but he's legendary, to people who write for television and movies and novels and such. As I study what his teachings are, it makes me realize even more that there's a formula that is yet to be really refined in professional wrestling, that would really, really capitalize on some of the psychology and the storytelling elements that are true to form in almost every great story that's ever been told. And some of them are recognizable to me, not in the form that they're being presented in, but in a kind of a shorthand form that wrestling people speak. It's a lot of the same thing.
And I might as well ask you as well about AEW, All Elite Wrestling. You got Cody and the Bucks starting this new wrestling promotion. What advice can you sort of give them so that they don't sort of directly try and compete with WWE in its early stages?
Well, the first thing, and I've actually said this a number of times, I'm sure they've heard it, but manage expectations. Not only your expectations as the group of people that are launching this new company, not only manage your internal expectations, but manage the expectations of the audience. Right now, my concern for them, because I want them to be hugely successful for a lot of reasons, but right now, the audience's expectation is so high. Everybody's jumping to the conclusion in their minds. The people at AEW aren't doing this intentionally, but they're allowing it to happen, which is almost the same thing. But the audience's expectations are so high they're unrealistic, at least for the next several years. In terms of competing with the WWE, there's no way in hell they're going to compete with the WWE. There is not enough drugs in the world someone could consume that would allow them to realistically believe they could be competitive to the WWE. WWE is too big. They've been around for 40 years or 50 years or more. They've got a stranglehold on the television marketplace here in the United States. No television network in their right mind would go head-to-head with them right now. And as long as that's the case, and AEW isn't prepared to go head-to-head, whether they think they can or not, they're never going to find a network, a television partner that will take that risk, right? Then they're not competing. That doesn't mean they can't coexist. It doesn't mean that they can't be hugely successful. They can, and I'm pretty sure they will be. But there's a difference between being successful and being competitive. And I think if they focus on being successful, if they focus on putting out a great product, if they focus on putting out a product that's different enough from the WWE so that it's distinguishable, but not so different as they alienate their core audience, if they find that sweet spot, as we say here in the States, then I think they can be hugely successful. But the first thing I would do is manage expectations, because everybody's running around asking the same question you just asked: what can they do to be competitive with the WWE? And my answer is nothing. They can't be competitive, but they can be successful.
And another question as well for me, I'm going to go back a little bit here quickly before Yang asks you the last question. We've been Raw General Manager in 2002, and you and Vince sort of keeping that hush-hush. Who was it that approached you originally? Because I haven't really heard the story that much. Who was the first person to approach you to say, hey, we would love to have you come on WWE TV and become General Manager of Monday Night Raw, the flagship show?
That was Vince McMahon. Vince called me. I knew that he was going to call me. I had people that were friends of mine that were inside of the WWE at a pretty high level. So I got a little a heads up, as they like to say. So I wasn't totally caught off guard. But Vince McMahon called me, and he was very cordial. I describe it in my book. He was very elegant, I think is the word that I use, very gracious. And I knew within 2 minutes of speaking to him on the phone that I was going to go to work for him. It was the right time. It was the right thing to do at the right time.
I just want to quickly say that your analysis of AEW, I have been saying it for weeks to these boys here, and you have just completely solidified my argument. I can now firmly have won. Okay, last question. Now, we're going to end on a bit of a fun one, Eric, if that's okay with you. Now, I feel like this is surely something you've never been asked before. And if it has been, then I need to meet this other person, because no one else is like me. But really quickly, just before you go, if you had to make the greatest sandwich of all time, what would you put in it? And most importantly, what bread would you use?
I love whole wheat bread.
Okay.
Okay, so I would go for I'd start out with whole wheat bread, number one. I love pepper jack cheese. I like anything spicy. And I would probably look for a really, really good homemade pastrami.
Ooh, I like that.
He's giving me the best answer I've ever heard, actually. I'm actually starving now.
Well, on that note...
so am I, as a matter of fact. As soon as we're done here, my wife and I are going to go out to eat. So you're starting your day. I'm ending mine.
Well, on that note, Eric, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. We're looking forward to seeing you come to Australia in June, and we're looking forward to hearing more of everything that's happened to you in pro wrestling over the last 30 years. Thank you so much. It's been an honor from the both of us to be joining us today.
This was a real blast, guys. It was a great interview. You did a great job. You did your homework. I appreciate that very, very much, and I look forward to meeting you.
Lovely.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for that, Eric.
And we're back.
And we're back.
How was it though? Like honestly, how was it interviewing?
Dude, shoot. Okay, like right off the fucking bat, I had goosebumps.
Yeah,
I'm not a journalant by trade.
Yeah.
Right? I do the podcast because I love a good bit of banter.
That's Michael's bag.
That's Michael's bag. And Michael was perfectly fine.
Yeah.
But for me, I feel like it's a problem for a lot of people who get into these kind of spheres that we're in.
Yeah.
But then when things start to pick up and you start to meet people who are also within the things that you're talking about, you have mark out moments.
Yeah.
Right? Like imagine doing a movie podcast as just a guy who does movies, right? And then you meet goddamn like Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah.
Right? And you're talking about the upcoming Endgame, right? You mark out, right? Because it's something you're so passionate about, you've been following for. That was exactly me when as soon as I heard Eric Bischoff on the phone, I'm like, shit, I can't believe this is actually happening.
Yeah.
I'm literally about to discuss wrestling with one of the finest minds ever.
Yeah, and then like obviously I had the same situation with when me and Michael got to interview Cody about 30 to 40 episodes ago.
Yeah.
That was crazy for me as well. It was like, this is the guy who has just, well actually no, it was a bit after. He'd been in New Japan. It was right before the tour in Australia last year.
Yeah.
So he'd been with the company for a while, and the being the elite thing was really catching fire. This is before, All In or, all that sort of stuff was really starting to make waves. But it was right on the precipice of that. And interviewing him then was very interesting, like talking to him. So you want to go back and listen to that? It's I think it's episode 70 something or other.
Oh, good bit of memory you have on there.
Yes.
And it's actually good that you mentioned that because I think we'll finish it with the discussion of. So obviously, if you just listened to the interview, we discussed. We asked Eric Bischoff for his opinions on AEW moving forward, yada yada, and we'll cap it off. We'll cap off this episode 100 with that kind of analysis from us as well.
Yeah.
But I think the best way to go about this is like, do you agree with me when I say he's one of the finest minds in wrestling?
He is.
Like, he has to be.
For
like,
a guy who, and like, from what I know about Eric Bischoff, I get a lot from like the Monday Night Wars documentary on the network, and obviously that is a little bit biased because it's produced by WWE. I would love an independent documentary filmmaker to come in and do a really comprehensive breakdown of that time period, because a lot of what we get is a lot of third-hand stuff. Like, we get a lot of stuff from like guys like Meltzer who are really involved in that sphere, but outside of either company. But I think having someone who is a really, really good investigative journalist, even someone like what's that bloody bloke's name? Does all the documentary, Louis Theroux.
Oh yeah.
Louis Theroux, someone who really, like, even if he's not interested in the subject matter, he's interested in a good story. Having someone like that come in and talk to these minds on either side and be like, what was it really like? And like I said, the Monday Night Wars documentary is a really good documentary. Go check it out. I think it's like a series of short episodes on the network. And it does break down from kind of both points of view how that period of time spanned out for both companies. But like I said, there is an internal bias because it is done by WWE. So I would love someone independently to come in and look at that time period and be like, what was really going on? But for someone who, Eric Bischoff, kind of accidentally fell into the wrestling business to then do as well as he did for as long as he did against this huge conglomerate that is WWE or WWF at the time is an outstanding achievement, So, yeah, he's got to be one of those guys. Yeah, he is, I think, a little bit, with the gift of hindsight, maybe underrated. But at the time, like, he was not only the guy behind the scenes pulling the strings, but he was also one of the guys in front of the camera week to week, being the face of this company. He literally was the Vince McMahon of that company, because he not only had his professional...
Dude, he was the Vince that created Vince.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's where... And, like, you and I were talking about it just before we jumped into the studio. Like, without Eric Bischoff, we honestly don't have the landscape of wrestling we have today. Wrestling we know today probably doesn't exist without Eric Bischoff.
No.
Right? And I would argue that he is the beginning of this, like the catalyst. Had he not achieved the success he had with WCW, right, I would argue, poke WWE and Vince McMahon for them to kick up their game, right? And him doing all that sparked the Vince McMahon character, right? Because prior to this, And Bischoff touched on it when we were doing the interview. He's like, when you realistically look at that era and you look at the product that they were doing at the time, right, and why they managed to beat them for 83 weeks was that what they were doing, their content was more focused to the adolescents, WCWs. Right?
Yeah,
Their content was deliberately focused to 18, 19, 20-year-olds.
Yeah.
Right? So they made a more mature product. Whereas WWE were making a product that's at that time, for children. Right? Kind of akin to what they were doing in the last couple of years here, right? But back then it was very obvious, right?
Yeah, exactly. But that's when you had, like, it was the big glut of gimmicks. Like, gimmicks became a thing.
Yeah.
Like, you had Big Boss Man. You had these, a multitude of characters that were based around, like, a job or a specific personality type.
Yeah.
Instead of just letting the wrestlers be wrestlers. And that is when you get something like Hall and Nash, as they were in WCW compared to who they were in WWE. Because in WWE, you got Diesel and you've got Razor Ramon, who both really, really good characters and fantastic workers. But Razor Ramon was Scarface, or some facsimile of Scarface. And then you got Diesel, who was, Shawn Michaels' bodyguard turned eventual foe. But beyond that, he didn't have much of a fleshed out character.
Yeah.
You go to WCW, they become Hall and Nash. And all of a sudden, they are these outside invaders that come in and just want to shake up the company, but you get more of their personality. And that is why I think people initially gravitated towards the Outsiders / NWO. And then, of course, you got Hogan coming in, which is going to help tenfold. But it was a focus on who these people were rather than what gimmick can we give this guy? What gimmick can we give this guy? How can we turn this guy who is a fantastic performer into a cartoon character? And that's kind of what it felt like WWE was doing at the time, whereas WCW was like, all right, show us your personality. How can we work with that? How can we make that marketable? And how can we make that into your ring persona and really sell the people on who you are? And really at the time, the only people that were kind of hamstrung with these weird gimmicks in WCW was like when they did the Yeti and when they did some dumb stuff. They weren't perfect. But the guys at the top of the card, Sting, Hall, Nash, Hogan, Flair, Booker T, all these guys were people.
I love how you just didn't even say Goldberg.
Oh, and of course, yeah.
That's stiff.
I'm sorry to Goldberg. If you're listening, don't hunt me down and kill me. But like that upper echelon is kind of gimmick free.
Yeah.
From a traditional gimmick perspective. They got obviously the NWO gimmick for the top three of those guys, and then eventually the NWO became like 20 people.
I think what you're getting at is, you're right, no gimmicks, but the key thing that they had was story.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And that is what Eric Bischoff brought to the table with WCW.
Yeah.
He understood that we are making a television product, right?
It's
harder, different than if we do live shows.
It's easier to believe story when you've got characters that are relatable.
Yeah.
You can't.
But the key thing being, I'm pretty sure, and this is probably just me throwing a complete airball here.
Bit of speculation.
But I argue that Eric Bischoff brought story to wrestling.
No, he did. 100%.
He brought story to wrestling.
And
just story to wrestling, but like the idea of it being more than just a once-off, right? A story being told through weeks, months, and like in this art.
And you mentioned it was the Goldberg streak.
And it was the Goldberg streak.
Ages. It ended real dumb, but that's because of other influencing factors. The fact that Nash had pretty much carte blanche backstage and could do whatever the fuck he wanted at one point. That's not his fault. But yeah, like I said, it's a lot easier to believe stories and really buy into it. Like if you got over in WWE at the time, you did have, Shawn Michaels was starting to come into his own as a main event. He had Bret Hart. Those guys at the top of the card, and he had like Taker. That was believable. But then the minute you go into the mid-card, lower card, it was just this weird glut.
Big Boss Man. Honky Tonk Man.
Yeah, Big Boss Man. Honky Tonk. It wasn't... They were cartoon characters. And it was for kids.
Yeah.
The minute Vince had that switch flicked and the change of attitude...
WWE attitude.
It started to work because then you had Rock, Stone Cold, DX. Like that switch was like, okay, let's take who you are. And like Stone Cold has said it a million times. It's just who you are dialed to 11.
Yeah.
And that is when the switch, like that 83 or 82 weeks, whatever, the minute that turned over, it was on for young and old, and WWE just streaked ahead because they built it on the back of characters, not gimmicks. Like you think about Rocky Maivia when he came in.
Yeah, that was what I was just about to get at.
He was the blue blood. He was the guy who was just smiling and wearing the streamers on his arms and shit.
To me, Rock is it has to be the symbol of that turning point.
Yes.
Right? He's got to be a character that was directly introduced in an era where they were losing WCW, and what they were still doing was the cartoon gimmicks. And then they said to themselves, all right, we're switching it up. We got to beat them now.
Yeah.
And then it was just, they used The Rock.
Yeah.
Right? It was The Rock that was the catalyst turning point for them.
Nation of Domination into The Rock, into that heel turn at Survivor Series 98, which was a huge fucking turning point.
Yeah.
Because you got the guy who was like, handpicked by everybody. This is the guy to be the face of the company. And then he turns heel and joins Mr. McMahon. And it's just like, what the fuck just happened? And that to
then
me...
WCW officially dies when he drops to Mankind.
Yeah. That was the big thing. And I think the other thing that Bischoff did brilliantly, and it feels like he was the first one to do this. I don't know, DX invaded WCW, but it feels to me like he was the first one to acknowledge the fact that there was a rivalry going on.
Yeah.
And we know now, like WWE like to just ignore that every other wrestling promotion exists. That's their MO. It's like, we are the only ones that exist. Even like to an extent, NXT sometimes feels like WWE main roster feels like NXT doesn't exist, which is real dumb. But the fact that they managed to embrace that rivalry and bring it into storyline, and like WWE did eventually, but that felt like that gave them the leg up earlier in this rivalry. Because they were like, yeah, we know they exist, and we're beating them. And we're going to tell you that all the time. We're going to keep putting it in your minds that you are watching the superior product, that you are watching the guys that are winning in the ratings every week, every Monday night. We're the ones with the best talent. We're the ones with the biggest market share and the biggest TV viewers. Keep watching us. And people did. Until that turning point. Where they got...
People did, and
where it feels like they got a bit too cocky.
That's what I was going to get at.
Yeah.
Because I believe there's a reason WWE deliberately doesn't acknowledge. And it works. It actually works the same way in both ways, actually.
Yeah.
Whereas with Bischoff's regard, you're right. I believe he's the first to be like, okay, I'm going to openly acknowledge the fact that we're going to war.
Yeah.
Right? This is a head-on with Monday night versus Monday night, right? And it worked for him. It worked for him for the longest time, right? But at the same time, it's free publicity. In a way. It's free publicity in a way.
It is.
With WWE or WWF at the time, whilst they want to take ahead or get ahead of them, it's just about finding that quick switch for them. But other than that, they don't have to do much work in order to promote, right? Because Bischoff will tell you, and I'm pretty sure everyone, it's got to be universally understood that where a lot of people pinpoint WCW's demise was the Finger Poke of Doom, right?
Finger Poke of Doom is a big one.
Right, but it was everything surrounding that.
Yeah.
So it was the idea
Wasn't that the same night they called the...
That was, that's what I'm saying.
Same night, yeah,
it was the exact same night that...
That's a bad night.
that Bischoff called the audible on commentary to say, Mankind has just won the WWF title.
Because back then, WWE would batch record. They'd do 2 shows in the same city, air one live, air one the week later. So they knew the results.
So they knew.
Yeah.
And so that was the same night as the Finger Poke of Doom. And a lot of people will say that's where the downfall
the Finger Poke of Doom
started really finished them.
It's something.
Yeah.
It's something, man.
I'm of the belief that had the Finger Poke of Doom happened without the commentary call, we'd actually have a different case.
We might.
Because I think the story of the Finger Poke of Doom, and this is me putting over Bischoff, it would work had they had 4 more weeks for them unrivaled, right, to let it flesh out.
Yeah.
Right? But because they called that audible on commentary,
so many people
which basically just told them to go watch WWE because everyone wanted it.
If you're hearing about the Finger Poke of Doom secondhand after watching Raw, you're like, wait, what the fuck? What do you mean he poked him in the eye and he dropped the belt? Like that to you, without the context of watching that entire episode or the following episodes because you've decided to switch to Raw, doesn't make sense. Or it's dumb and you're like, well, fuck, I don't want to watch that anymore. I want to watch Mankind hold the title and defend it week in and week, or go up against Mr. McMahon and The Rock, and so that would have hurt them doubly. Is the fact that they haven't, all of their audience who switched across have now heard about this event from their mates who decided to keep watching WCW, and you hear about something like that secondhand, you're like, that sounds really stupid.
Mm.
You know? If you had to watch it live, maybe it is a different case. And
But
maybe
that's what I'm
people,
saying. Yeah,
if
yeah.
people didn't switch over, they're like,
Had you
he
not
poked him in the eye and
switched
he
over,
dropped the belt. You know, that to you
Yeah.
seems like a big deal. But
it's a story that needed the next 2 weeks. And I believe
Yeah.
Bischoff knew that too. He's
Yeah, I'm
like,
sure
all
he
right,
did,
this
yeah.
story needs the next 2 weeks
Yeah.
to justify what that
but the
finish was.
problem is,
But the problem was
those next 2 weeks were dominated by people switching to Raw.
Yeah, that's what I'm. Yeah, those next 2 weeks, because you had called the commentary audible, and that's what I'm saying. You take out the commentary audible, I believe this goes a lot
Could have
differently.
been a different story.
Because that story of the Finger Poke of Doom, it gets shat on a lot, but I believe it could have had some effect had it not been tarnished by the fact that they called the audible in the commentary. That's just me.
Yeah.
That's just me.
That's a fair.
Right?
That's a pretty good.
Um,
it's a pretty good assumption to make. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I just blanked.
You've blanked. You've gone.
I've literally blanked.
You're just staring at that wall.
We're going to
Just-
cut that audio right there.
I can do that. But yeah, it is an interesting kind of like hypothetical to play. Is like what would have happened? Would Bischoff have bought WWE out from underneath Vince? I don't foresee it ever happening.
Fuck, it's a hard
When
little.
did-
It's a hard little hypothetical
When
to
did
play.
WWE go public? Because the minute they go public, it's impossible for Bischoff and WCW to buy them.
They went public pretty late though.
Yeah,
In the
'cause
PG era. That's why
'cause it was-
they had to start that way.
Well, because it was when they-
Ruthless Aggression, I'm pretty
when
sure they went public.
When they went public, that was when they had to change the name because then the World Wildlife Fund got uppity.
No, they got up at them earlier than that, didn't they?
I thought them going.
No,
public,
not them going public was I think they just went up at them. Because
really.
they were WWE in 2001, weren't they? Or were they still WWF then?
Oh, it was like 2001, 2000. Hang on, give me a sec. When did WWE go public? Here we go. This is top quality content. October 19th, 1999.
Oh, really? Oh, fuck me. I was completely wrong then. I always thought, actually, no, the PG...
Interesting. So that's still Attitude Era.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I'm pretty
But
sure...
that makes sense because that's when the company is probably valued at its highest.
Yeah.
At that point. So they...
Did you hear the other day, apparently their shares have hit $100.
Yeah.
I think they're actually pretty high right now.
Fuck. Should have got on that early.
Well, I've always said that WWE shares have to be the easiest to predict.
Yeah.
Because they're always going to spike in April,
By-
and they're always going to go low after Survivor Series.
Yeah.
So
No.
actually, they're going to go
No.
low in the middle of the year.
No. They're going to go low anytime they do a Saudi Arabia show. So buy around Saudi Arabia.
Yeah. So if anything, next
and
month
then-
is the best
and then-
time
and
to
then-
buy.
And then sell at next year's WrestleMania.
Dude, it was like a year and a half ago. They were on like $40.
Really?
That's it. I swear at some point in the last 2 years at the very least, I've looked at the WWE share, saw it go for $40 and gone, GG, fair enough. But did I not expect to get to $100? But that's why I said the
All right.
easiest shares to predict. 'Cause
All right.
always around WrestleMania season, they're going to come up.
So 99, May 5th, 2002 was when they changed from WWF to WWE.
Yeah.
So that was when the...
Damn it, World Wildlife Foundation.
I know, what dicks. Fuck that panda, man.
Yeah, shoot, though.
Fuck your panda.
WWE has a better ring to it, though. Far
guess.
better ring to it.
That's because most of our life we've been watching it
I know,
as
I know.
WWE. Whereas like anyone that's like 10 years older than us is like, no, man, it's WWF, man. Fucking Attitude Era. Yeah, DX, suck it.
Well, I was fucking actually talking about it the other day. When it comes to like wrestling promotions, there's a lot to be said about just how easily it rolls off the tongue because you need it to be very smooth.
Yeah, AEW is not a smooth...
I don't know. I actually think AEW isn't too bad, right?
I'm not a big fan.
It just doesn't ring as much as WWE because I think
No.
WWE, like, granted, we have it imprinted in us that it's associated to wrestling. Everyone knows it is, right?
I think the best
I think World Series Wrestling is not a good one.
No.
No stiff to them, but I
No.
think WSW doesn't really ring.
WSW.
Nor does Ring of Honor.
ROH. No, not really.
ROH doesn't.
No.
PWG is pretty good.
That's what I was going to say.
PWG is pretty
you
good.
get the PWG chance. PWG.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the old...
NXT, very good.
NXT is a fucking fantastic
Yep.
acronym.
NXT is very brilliant.
Yeah, NXT is great. PWG is a really good one because it does like have you ever watched like a PWG
And you know what?
DVD?
Give him some put over. TNA wasn't bad either.
TNA. Yeah.
Right.
Have you
End on a vow. End on a vow.
Yeah, I was gonna say, have you ever watched a PWG like DVD or Blu-ray or whatever?
Oh god, no, but I've watched matches.
Yeah, okay. That crowd, it does remind me of the ECW crowd.
ECW, another good one.
ECW.
I feel like if you have a vowel to
ECW.
start with,
ECW.
and then either end with the vowel or the dub,
Yeah.
right? Because you got to end with a W if you're going to have a wrestling in your name, right?
Yeah.
And put them over. APW has a nice one too.
APW.
APW's got a nice one because it starts with a vowel and ends with either a vowel or
What
dub.
about Melbourne MC Dub?
MC dub.
Yeah, Melbourne City Wrestling.
Yeah, that works too.
Yeah.
Fuck, now we've just gone on a tangent about acronyms.
Yeah. But I mean,
Episode 100, people.
yeah, I know. This is the quality content you've been with us for.
People are only tuning in for the 20 minutes of Eric Bischoff.
I know you've all tuned out by now.
Yeah, by now you're not even listening to us.
Yeah, talking about fucking shit. But yeah,
No, but so Eric, now we look at the landscape of wrestling we have today.
Yep.
Right? And I think now is a good time to talk about
very different landscape.
this will be the only time ever until they actually launch that we're going to talk about AEW in some regard. Right? Because it's just unfair. And like Bischoff said it best as well. It's like,
hey, like if we did the news segment as we usually would, man, the big news this week is that fucking Dustin has quit WWE to fight Cody at AEW.
oh God, can we do a separate episode just talking about? Have you seen that?
I've seen the promo.
That has to be.
It's really good.
That has
really
to
good,
be one of the best promo packages I've ever seen.
I am
ever.
I was already
seen.
going to watch Double or Nothing, but now I'm really going to watch Double or
I was going to watch it because we're just wrestling marks, right?
Yeah, I know.
But now I'm really going to watch it because and this is what promo packages are meant to do.
Yeah.
Right? And this is where WWE has.
I mean,
I don't say lost its art because every now and then they'll bring out a promo package that makes you sit back and you go,
oh, fuck yeah.
fuck, am I moist for
Like-
this? Like they still got it.
Yeah.
Right?
I think
that Daniel.
NXT does a really good job.
NXT doesn't. The last really good one from WWE was Daniel Bryan's.
Yeah, the Daniel Bryan, and before that, the CM Punk one before.
Yeah,
Money
the
Bank,
CM Punk
that
was
a
that
fucking
was
amazing
insane.
promo.
But that's what I'm getting at. These promos, that's what they're meant to do.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm waiting
Whilst
for them
we
to
are
release
hyped.
something, the Jericho Omega 2.
That, in my opinion, after this
Dude.
promo package, fucking Dustin and Cody main event.
I think it does. No, I think it does.
Yeah, and this isn't
Yeah.
and this isn't to say that like, oh, of course Cody main events. It's his company. He's just going to put himself. No, like
Have
this.
they announced? They haven't
No,
announced.
they haven't announced the main event. But
No,
like
titles.
they've announced one. It's the tag belts.
Well, that's the
Lucha Bros
that's the
and-
AAA
yeah.
tag belts. It's not the.
They haven't
the
announced
AEW.
they have their own tags.
Yeah, I know.
yet.
Are they just going to borrow titles?
Oh, you know what? Smart move to do it in the
Do it
early
initially.
stages.
Yeah, I would not be surprised. Do
Yeah.
you know what's happening? The Crockett Cup happening right now.
Yeah. Aldous and we've gone on a fucking tangent.
Aldous and Marty Skrull.
Yeah.
All right, Marty's definitely going to AEW. Yeah, we're under no illusions. His contract is up, I think, in a week or two with Ring of Honor.
Yeah.
Does he take the NWA title?
He doesn't beat Nick Aldis. Nick Aldis will appear on the show in some way,
I don't
in some
fucking
regard.
know about that, mate. I can see it happening, and then bringing the NWA title across to AEW.
Honestly, Nick Aldis deserves more goddamn credit.
No, he does. He's a fucking fantastic.
He is a
worker.
fantastic worker, and he is being strapped with the biggest belt in the world, right? I mean,
Should be.
It
The most
should be
lineage.
the most lineage,
It is-
probably the most prestigious.
It
like,
is the
honestly.
lineage title, man.
Like this man deserves more. Like he deserves so much more.
He does seem content though, being the
He
one
does.
being the one to be like, I want to get the NWA name back out there.
And we discussed it like a lot of podcasts ago, but like the idea of, especially we actually discussed it around the time that he was fighting Cody.
yeah,
At the
Yeah.
70th show.
Yeah.
But it
And
does
I
seem
think
like
I was pitching to lead it into have it show up at Wrestle Kingdom.
Yeah.
Just to add that, like, and I'd love like a guy like Nick Aldis to get his rematch and, you know, get a big title match at something like Tokyo Dome, because I know right now the NWA is performing in bingo halls and
yeah.
it's not like it's
But it just seemed at that time when they had strapped it to Aldous and they were doing these big promotions, like they were really focusing on
pushing it,
videography.
They were.
Yeah, and they were getting out there and doing these promos with Ring of Honor and all that kind of stuff. It just seemed that this was a turning of the tide for the indies.
Yeah.
Now it seems like that's what AEW is the answer to,
Yeah.
right? Whereas it should have been the NWA, but like we're neither here nor there.
Yeah.
But like AEW seems to be now the answer of we're becoming this indie spot.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But all of this being said, Eric Bischoff said it perfectly just then, right? Like when it comes to talking about AEW, and we've said it before, and I know I've said it a million fucking times, they're not in the same regard as WWE. And they know it. Eric Bischoff knows it. Everyone should know it.
They're not pretending to be,
Yeah.
which is good. I think that's where they need to stick to for now.
Yeah.
Even though they've got the backing of a guy who is as rich or probably richer than Vince McMahon, that
That
does
doesn't
not
mean
make
anything.
your company.
It doesn't.
Because WWE has NXT. WWE has WWE Films, WWE Music, WWE Merch. It has a model that essentially just generates money for the company without them having to do much.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Nothing.
Whereas AEW are going to have to fight and scrap. Aside from their merch, which they're
Dude,
always going to sell.
They're
always gonna sell
10,
fucking
15,
t-shirts.
20 years away.
Yeah.
Because it's just what you just said. It's whilst Vince McMahon, one man, right? One man.
And he's still the guy
is
that
worth
calls
billions.
most of the shots.
Right?
Yeah.
You stick WWE right up against AEW, and WWE is far, far more profitable.
WWE
right? Like not even just on an obvious point.
Yeah.
Right? Like AEW can spend millions and millions and millions bringing in talent, yada yada yada, but they will never have the thousands of hours of footage.
No.
Right? To be able to do what WWE
Well, and
can
the
do.
Yeah, I completely forgot the fucking network generates them a shit ton of money every year.
Yeah.
And their TV deal makes a lot of money. A lot of money too.
You can't beat WWE. You
No.
can't. Not anymore.
But
But that's not to say that's a bad thing.
But that's why WWE isn't looking to be compared to AEW. It's looking to be compared to the NFL, the NBA.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
in that echelon.
Yeah.
It's not over here.
Yeah. Oh, and it's
with
so
the-
obvious too.
Yeah, no, they always put up like those analytics and stuff at like coming out of ad breaks. It's like it was the most fucking like it beat the college NCAA playoffs last night in viewership and like that they always compare.
They ain't
it to-
talking about whether or not they've beaten the fucking local down the road, right?
Yeah,
whether or not
they-
Ring of Honor had a fucking show last week.
They are
We're not talking about that.
About massive sporting.
They're talking about
companies.
globalized.
Exactly.
industry,
That's
so.
what WWE is. AEW can have all the money in the world, but until you have that legacy, you ain't shit.
Yeah.
Build that legacy, then come talk to us. I don't think we're going to be alive to see a scenario where AEW is even close. Assuming both companies still exist in like 70 years.
I think
I just don't see
like willing to give AEW benefit of the doubt, right? I think they will be.
I think they're going to put on good shows.
They'll put on great shows.
They're going to draw.
They'll draw, right? And they will
But-
get some residual effects that WWE has the benefits of, right? The idea of mainstream attention every now and then for something they do, right? They'll get that, right? They'll be the only other company to ever do that aside from WWE.
They will dominate
But
the
that-
Twitter GIFs
for... But that will not mean they're directly in the same league as WWE. Like, they're nowhere near it. The fact that the report come out not too long ago that... So TNT's looking at them, right? But it's not TNT looking at them. They're looking at TNT.
Yeah.
Apparently, they're paying TNT to get on their network.
That
doesn't happen.
There was a rumor killer.
Oh, there's a rumor killer.
There was a rumor killer on that. It wasn't true.
Oh, it wasn't true. Oh.
Well,
I'm a shit journalist.
There was some... I did see that report, and I saw an article saying, no, this is a crossing of wires somewhere. But there are people interested, and like apparently it's going to come down to literally the same week that SmackDown moves to Fridays on Fox, AEW are going to take that Tuesday night spot.
Yeah.
On whatever network they land on.
Which is fair.
Yeah.
Which is fair.
And
like,
I mean,
they're not even on the same days.
We're not going to get it for years. We're going to have to like find ways to watch it. Because right now we get our WWE through Fox 8, which is through Foxtel, the one TV subscription service in Australia, mind you.
Yeah.
America has like fucking 20. I don't know. There's too many.
That's fucked.
The cable packages, like, because you're Verizon, AT&T, and they're all like fucking segmented off. Like, you can't have Verizon in the same town as AT&T. It's really weird. Comcast as well. But we have one subscription service in Australia. WWE TV is on that. I don't see them ever picking up AEW in the near future.
Well, stuff like Sci-Fi and stuff have picked up the odd Impact show years ago.
Yeah, that was
right, like,
but that was when like they were like Impact were drawing in the millions.
Yeah.
For that like couple of year span where you had Sting, Kurt Angle, AJ Styles, Christopher Daniels, Ric Flair, Hulk Hogan, Kevin Nash. Like, that is what they needed to even think about putting TNA on Australian TV at one point, because they were drawing in the millions in the States, but you needed all of that talent to draw in the millions.
Yeah.
Right now, what does TNA draw? 100,000, 200,000, maybe?
That is actually probably that's an extremely good point, because and I think it's even noted when it comes to what AEW is doing now.
Yeah.
The idea being that a lot of them have come out and said, if you're leaving WWE, that doesn't mean you have an exclusive right to come with us, right? We're not signing WWE guys just because you're WWE guys, right? We're signing indie guys. What they're doing is, it just seems like they have a 15-year plan in their head.
They
right?
do.
They're not going to make the same mistakes as TNA.
I wouldn't expect these guys to go in this without thinking fairly far down the line.
They have to.
And that's why I think
But
a
I
lot
think
of
the
them
one thing they're going to do, and it's going to be obvious, right, is that they're going to try and build their first ever homegrown star, right?
Yeah.
That's the only way.
There was reports this week, Billy Gunn was talking about them setting up a training facility.
Fuck, they're really just hitting the ground running, aren't they?
Yeah. That would be, like, if they set up, like, it wouldn't be much for them to set up their own dojo. They've got plenty of guys there who can, and I think if it's definitely centralized to either Jacksonville or California.
Yeah.
Seems to be the two bases they're working out of now. Jacksonville for the business side, and then at least I know the Bucks live in California. So that seems to be like where they're sort of still basing themselves. Yeah, if they can bring in and have their own dojo, you're always going to have guys around to teach these kids. And then, it could be a case of like, okay, this is the first guy we have taken who knew nothing about or didn't know how to wrestle 2 years ago. He was in the dojo. He did really well. We put him on like littler shows. I could even see AEW, sorry, that was me, AEW doing something like the New Japan Excursion, where you're like, all right, we got this guy coming through the dojo. Can we book him in MLW? Can we book him in PWG? Can we book him in like all of these smaller little promotions in America that all these guys have worked for at some point and probably have a really good relationship with the bookers? I'm going to turn that off. And go, hey, we've got a young kid. We want to see what he's got outside of our system. And they go, right, okay, book him on a show in California. Book him in a show in Sacramento. Book him in a show in fucking Cleveland. If you can get over with a Cleveland crowd, then we can put him on our show.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's going to take time to have that first homegrown kid. But once they do, that's when you really feel that this promotion has gone from being, this is a collection of guys who were mates and thought this was a good idea, to this is a legitimate promotion that is building its own stars from the ground up.
Not even that, but this is like, as soon as that starts to happen and we start to see the fruits of their labor from 1 or 2 stars from their own homegrown facility that they have trained themselves, who we only know from AEW, right? Because then this perfectly circles back to what, got Eric Bischoff over in WCW and why WCW was managed to beat the fucking giant that it is now at WWE, but not then, but now as WWE. It was the fact that they paid attention to their homegrown guys first, right? Yep. They had the Nashes, they had all that, but what really got them over the line was the Bill Goldbergs, right? It was the Chris Jerichos. Yep. It was the guys that had jumped there first, that they had given them the spotlight and booked them right first.
I mean, the big one was like, it was Sting and Flair.
Sting and Flair, they were big names.
They came from NWA, but like WCW was a weird NWA
it was
conglomerate. Kind of, there's a fuzzy,
they borrowed the world title for
there's a fuzzy period where they were kind of the same thing, and then WCW. I think when Ted Turner bought, he was like, "I'm changing the name. It's now WCW." That's the history on it. I'm not versed in it beat for beat, but I'm pretty sure that's how it happened. So but those guys had never worked or rarely worked for the Fed. They'd never worked for WWE or WWF. Ric Flair was always the NWA guy. He did the fucking trips around the states and went to this promotion, went to that promotion, put the belt up, and always always won because he's Ric Flair. But he always put that guy over in a way. Like he was a big star once Ric Flair left and went to the next territory. Sting was the same way. Sting was a guy that was in that NWA scene, transferred into WCW, and became the Crow Sting. Yeah. And became one of the biggest names. And
I'd argue the Sting we know is more or less a WCW homegrown than he was an NWA.
I think so too. Yeah.
Tour first.
Yeah.
Whereas Ric Flair obviously did more of his stuff on the NWA circuit before doing WCW.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas Sting, he was on the NWA circuit for a while, but he was more or less homegrown in WCW.
Yeah, he was.
But what I'm getting at
never stepped foot in WWE until fucking years later.
But what I'm getting at is you look at the Goldbergs of what they managed to build.
Yeah,
there,
I know.
Right. And on another degree, you look on WWE's side of things now, The Rocks. Right?
Yeah.
It's those, I would say, you look at those two guys and you go, all right, those were each turning points in their respective arcs.
They were.
Goldberg was first to manage to beat WWE. Then when The Rock came along and they said, all right, we've got our homegrown guy here, let's switch him over because we know what he can do and let him run with it. Then WWE started to take a hold, right? AEW if they're going to start their own promotion, if they're going to do these kind of own training stuff, the only way they'll ever have a chance of competing, and I say competing, not just being successful, but competing, right, against WWE, is if they manage to build this one guy, 1, 2, 3 guys, right, that there's just something about them, right? Something about them like Stone Cold, like The Rock, like Goldberg, and they notice it and they book it right. Then it's that story that people gravitate to, right? Because it's stories, right? And this is what Bischoff, and this is what made his legacy. It's stories first, right? Focus on that, right? Build your company now around the big stars of Chris Jericho, of Cody Rhodes, the Young Bucks. But these aren't guys that are going to get you over the line in 5 or 6 years' time. It will be the homegrown guy that they build. The guy that sits in the wings while Chris Jericho and Cody Rhodes main event the next couple of pay-per-views. But then he is the guy on building the ring, right? And then a year and a half from now, he's in a battle royal, right? And then all of a sudden, the crowd gets behind him because they want more of this guy. And they will hear it first, right? And then it's about whether or not they pull that trigger. That is what gets AEW over the line.
Yeah. No, you're right. I was going to say something before, but you cut me off and I can't remember what it was. God damn it. It's right there at the top of my brain. I'm just like, what the fuck were you going to say? Now I've forgotten it. That's really annoying. It was something to that effect, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Do you think that they can... It is kind of hard because most of the guys they've brought on are known outside of AEW.
But it's a lot of like NWA and WCW now, isn't it? Like, think of them as that, right?
Yeah.
Like, let's say they're the new WCW.
The guy to me that stands out the most from that roster... I know what I was going to say now. All the guys that came on early, so Cody, Bucks, Kenny, all that, have been pushing the fact that they've been pushing their backstage role more than, say, their in-ring stuff. So like they're all exec producers. Brandy's the head of something. I can't remember.
Branding.
Branding, yeah. But they're all like heavily entrenched in, we are going to be the ones backstage as well. So the product from when we're in the ring to when we eventually hang up the boots and go full-time into our backstage roles, the product isn't going to change that much because we've been the ones the entire time plotting out how the company is going to be. So you're not going to get a drastic change from when, you know, the Bucks hang it up, Cody hangs it up, fucking Kenny hangs it up. All that's going to change is the people on screen, but the way they tell stories, the way they build narrative, the way they construct themselves as a company is still going to be the same. And that kind of, I guess, stability is good for a company like that, where you need a vision and a sort of a public image. And I think that's what Ring of Honor does really, really well, is that like something as simple as the Code of Honor. Every time there's a match in Ring of Honor, you shake hands. Something as simple as that lets you know this is a Ring of Honor match. And it's branding. AEW, I think, need to look at that and go, okay, what can we take from, you know, and these guys have done the rounds in Ring of Honor in New Japan. What can we take from these promotions that people love and then sort of twist it and turn it into our own thing, and then so that when people tune in and they might just be flicking through the channels one night, they land on AEW and go, that's AEW. I can tell straight away that's AEW. And that's what WCW did so well, is like, the arenas they chose and the way they set up their stage was so different to WWE. Like, they would do stuff out in the open.
Yeah.
Like, and it just had this really, really cool different feel. And they kind of had like a smaller Tron and a more cramped entrance. But it was immediately you look at that and you go, that's a WCW match. Or even like the camera angles were different. You know, they did stuff that was like easily identifiable without having to go, what the fuck am I watching? Oh, no, wait, I can tell it's a WCW show. It's a WWE show. I think AEW have to have this, I guess, this sort of combined mission plan where they're like, okay, we have the guys behind the scenes calling the shots. As much as they're going to be in front of the ring, in front of the camera and in the ring doing their thing that they know how to do, they're also going to be the guys in guerrilla after their match calling, you know, the next show or the next match and be in charge of all that. So I think that's to their benefit right now. Obviously, we need to wait and see how their first show goes. Obviously, they've already had All In, and aside from a few audio and camera issues, it was a pretty smoothly run show. And apparently, Cody called a lot of that from Guerrilla himself. He was the exec producer for that show. So, yeah, it is a waiting game though, because we got to see how it goes. And that is always going to be the trick. And I think that, like, obviously, like Bischoff and Ted Turner and that back in the day would have been that same way. They're like, okay, how do we make this stand out? How do we make this different from WWE? How do we make this our own brand and have people instantly be able to recognize it if they're flicking between Raw and Nitro? You know, what is going to differentiate the two shows?
Well, just to build on top of that, do you believe now that WWE has mastered television then? Like just going on like the way they structured their sets,
by
how
now they
camera
should have had
work.
to.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
okay, well, we go back to the brand split. The crane shot on SmackDown did not last long. Remember that?
True.
But that was them trying something different, and they wanted to make SmackDown feel like a different show to Raw.
Yeah, very
They
true.
changed the set. The sets were different. The ring was kind of the same, but they hung on to the Raw announcers on the ramp and the SmackDown announcers next to the ring. They hung on to that. Sorry. But then you give it a year and the sets start looking the same again, and you know,
like you're right there. That's what I'm saying.
The
right?
crane.
So that's one thing immediately.
But it is immediately recognizable as WWE.
Yeah. But like that's the one thing immediately then that AEW looks at and goes, all right, well, we know how we can immediately be different. Set design. Right? That's what they're going to go with.
Yeah.
So set design. But I'm talking about like, has WWE mastered the idea of, you know, quick camera cuts, right? Where cameras are positioned when pertaining to wrestling.
Sometimes.
Right?
Sometimes.
Obviously, it all depends on the story they're trying to tell, but I believe they're so well educated and so much experience within the field of, all right, we know all the stories that it can be told in wrestling. Ergo, we know all the television, like the producing notes on it, where to put cameras, how audio, like how commentary sells, yada, yada, yada. WWE seems to have that artistry mastered in a way.
There's some times where they fuck it up. But for the most part, it's pretty solidly shot television.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think
like if that was the only defining quality to make a company be like to make a wrestling company sit there and be like, why aren't we on television? Oh, it's because someone like WWE has already mastered television.
A lot of what people do, but like, and then that comes down to a budget thing. Like someone like PWG, the majority of their stuff is a hard cam.
Yeah.
And then they'll have some roving camera guys around the ring for the big spots that you want to be under someone leaping over the top rope or whatever. But like that's
the closest company I can actually think of that almost directly compared with WWE in that regard of production and television production was Lucha Underground.
Yeah, but they had a completely different style.
Completely different style.
Yeah. And they had once again they had the backing of someone with a bit of money.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, but
they lasted, but then obviously they haven't lasted.
It's because they
right?
signed those stupid exclusive contracts.
Yeah.
Which was a dumb idea. Like, why would you do
These
that?
are the things that AEW should be looking at.
I know,
and obviously I believe they have, right?
I don't think they've actually... I know the core group of guys obviously signed exclusive deals for, I think it was 5 years.
Yeah, 5 years.
All of them signed 5 years.
But everyone else is pretty lean.
I think everyone else is like, they have the opportunity to go out and do that PWG show. They have the opportunity to go back to New Japan if they want
the
to.
Lucha Brothers are here next month.
Yeah.
Well, 2 months from now. Yeah.
They're still signed with AAA.
Yeah.
They're still signed with... They do stuff with TNA still. And they're doing stuff with AEW.
Yeah.
Like, that is the freedom you need. I know it's money that you think you should be earning. I think that's the big thing with WWE is like anyone that goes anywhere else is earning money for a different company that isn't us. And Vince seems to take that pretty personally, which is kind of stupid because this is business. And I know we kind of touched on the John Oliver thing when it happened. We didn't really discuss much of it.
Yeah.
The free agent or the free agent independent contractor. That was the term.
Well, a lot of people
that
have
is
come
a
out.
really dumb fucking way to put it.
But it's come out recently from a lot of people that it's not that way anymore. It's an outdated understanding of the industry.
What was the date on that?
The John Oliver interview was
contract?
recent.
No,
right?
but I'm like, what? Because he drew that from an actual WWE contract, but I'm wondering what the date on that contract
Yeah,
was.
I don't know. But it's a lot of people, maybe it's like a lot of bit of hyperbole, a lot of people just like spitting bullshit.
Yeah, but all those people that defended it, most of those are still signed with the company.
That's what I'm saying.
It was Big Show.
Yeah.
It was Mark Henry.
Yeah.
And these guys are...
And those guys were signed probably during that era as well.
Yeah.
And that's not to say it wasn't like that, because I think a lot of people knew it was like that in the 2000s,
well, I mean,
right?
Punk talked about it in the podcast with Colt Cabana.
Yeah.
And he was like, I signed a contract that said independent contractor, but I can't go and work anywhere else. I can't go into a tattoo show, and I'm the guy in WWE who's known for tattoos. Oh, wait, they didn't want me to do it. They sent Randy instead. You know, it's little stuff like that where it's like,
yeah,
all right, you say these guys are independent contractors, but then you have these weird...
That's one side of the coin.
It is one side of the coin.
I think the main thing that John Oliver was touching on with that was they're independent contractors, but they're doing employee stuff, so they should get health benefits. That's where that string was going, right?
I know that's where that string was going.
And that's where a lot of people have come out and gone, that's just not how it's... Like, Matt Hardy was just like, I've been looked after my entire career. WWE's paid for every single one of my bills. Yeah. Right? Like, that's how it's always been.
But that's Matt Hardy.
But Matt Hardy wasn't always Matt Hardy, like, as in, like, today, right? And even then, he's still not, like, a John Cena or Randy Orton, yada, yada. Matt Hardy would be a great example, actually, of a mid-card guy. Right, so if he's an example of a great
really
mid-card
hard
guy,
to believe that they would ever, especially back in the early days when he was like, him and Jeff and Edge and Christian, the Dudleys were like this insanely good tag scene.
Yeah.
That made them a fuck ton of money.
Yeah.
It really like that goodwill is going to go through to his mid-card days in like the early 2000s.
Oh yeah, but what I'm saying
he's going to get his shit paid for.
Yeah,
I'm sure there's guys in the company. And I think John Oliver did bring up a couple of examples of guys who were just run-of-the-mill workhorse guys that had something happen to them and then kind of got fucked over.
Yeah. And that's fair, right? And, like, I guess, you know, you're right, actually. Yeah. I guess we brush over a lot of those ones.
Because we look at the guys who came out and spoke.
They're all the big ones.
They're all the big ones who are on big dollar contracts who the company would go, okay, this is our investment and we need to protect our investment. So we're going to pay for your surgery. But I'm sure there's people who have been in the situation where, we're probably going to dump you in like 2 months anyway. Good luck. See ya. Like, yeah, I don't know. I don't want to get too much into that because we didn't really discuss it when it came out. We kind of ignored it because it was leading up to WrestleMania. So whatever. But I mean, is that something that we could get from AEW? Is like, all right, I think they did come out and actually mention.
They've actually come out and just straight said that what we're doing here is trying to provide something in this industry it's never seen before.
Yeah,
it's a very common thing in the industry to have independent contractors. And aside from WWE, every other company is allowed to.
Those independent contractors get to go and do other shows.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. So when it comes to independent contractors outside of WWE, that's fine. That's literally how the industry works because that's the definition of independent contracting. WWE being the exception where it's like, you really shouldn't be independent contractors, but you are in a weird kind of way.
Yeah.
But none of you really fly a flag on it because we're paying you millions, right?
I mean, some guys are getting paid millions.
Yeah, but like... And that's where AEW is coming at the perspective. It's like, okay, we're trying to provide something so unprecedented here in this industry where you're going to get employee benefits. Where it's like the things like healthcare. Our talent is looked after like employees. And that's what it's now immediately setting them apart. But putting that into practice is a whole other thing.
I know. It is. And I guess we're going to see. But anyway, that's kind of like the changed landscape from the Eric Bischoff days to now. In a nutshell, is just everything we've discussed in the last 30 minutes. But yeah, it's... I don't know, is there anything you wanted to add to that? No? Yeah.
No.
It has come a long way. And I don't know, I guess we'll see where like the next... I think I said this like a couple of weeks ago. The next 12 months are going to be really fucking interesting. Like there's going to be a lot of stuff, a lot of moving pieces, and I'm excited.
Competition is once again brewing in the wrestling world.
It is. Quickly before we go, Raw and SmackDown, they happened this week.
Oh, they did too. Oh my God. We're a wrestling podcast. I completely forgot.
Did you watch?
Yeah, no, of course I did.
All right, good.
Of course I did.
I didn't watch the last hour of Raw, and apparently no one else did, because did you see the drop-off?
No.
First hour to second hour, drop-off of 400,000. Second hour to third hour, drop-off of 500,000 people. Because Baron Corbin was in the main event.
Oh, against AJ, true.
And I think everyone knew exactly how that was going to end. And also, it's Baron fucking Corbin. But guess what? That triple threat match with Baron Corbin in it, also in the second hour. Dude is TV cancer.
Yeah, look, fair enough. Fair enough.
I really hate to say it because...
He's a damn talented guy.
Because the fact that he's getting genuine heel heat is a rarity in WWE these days. But it's...
But if it's
not the wrong kind of heat, but I think people are getting to the point where they just I don't care.
It's the only kind of heat that is wrong in WWE.
I don't care.
Where if you can get heel heat, you can be hated, yada yada, and for any other company, and even for WWE, that's what they want, right? Because you're listed in reaction.
Yeah.
But if you're making people actually turn off their television, then that's
it's such a worry.
Then that's the worry, right?
Yeah, it was the one of the lowest rated Raws of the modern era.
Fuck.
And this is 2 weeks after Mania. Sorry, 3 weeks after Mania, and a week after the Superstar Shake-Up. This should be like when everyone gets back interested into it because everything's changed and we've got new superstars and new challenges. We've got the title on Raw every fucking week, and it hasn't changed much. It's interesting. Anyway, Bray Wyatt is a creepy dude.
I fucking love it.
Me too.
I love it. I love everything about it.
I'm sorry. I read a report today they're going to drop it.
No.
Yeah, because the higher up execs or like the higher shareholders were kind of like, this is marketing a cult to children.
Oh,
and I'm like,
this is wrestling.
It's wrestling, man. Just let it happen.
Wrestling.
Let it happen. It's so. I just want to see how this pans out because it reminds me of like a fucking weird Adult Swim show, and I love weird Adult Swim shows, man. Like, it's
dude, he looks fucking lean too.
Oh, dude.
All right, give it up to Bray, man.
He's got his dad bod on.
Yeah,
but he's got thin dad bod.
He's got. I like put on muscle dad bod, man. Like,
oh, you know, he's a thick boy.
Yeah,
you thick boy.
Fuck, JoJo's so lucky.
Oh. So's Bray.
I'm so. Oh god, you're telling me, mate.
Anyway,
I was so behind that gimmick.
Yeah,
Fuck.
I'm down, man. Like the puppet stuff was weird, but now that we have some context, I'm like, I dig this, man. I dig it.
And there was something else this week that I was really fucking
this.
hyped for.
Man.
I can't fucking remember.
Is it KO turning heel for the millionth time?
Nah, but that was. I didn't see that coming.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't see that coming.
Never be friends with Kevin Owens. He will turn on you.
Sami Zayn.
Chris
Jericho. Kofi Kingston. Like, what are you doing?
Come on, man. Patterns. I said this patterns.
Yo, but I'm loving what they're doing with this build into Money Day. And we said it last week. It's like now is the week to start building.
And
right?
they did.
And they
We
have.
have 4 title matches already.
Holy fuck. And I
Becky,
can't believe.
And Becky is 2 of those.
Thank you. Called it.
Yeah, I know.
Double
That's
Judy
fair.
Jones.
Yep.
All right. Thank fucking God.
Good on her.
No shit, good on it. But that's what I'm saying. It's a double-edged sword. It's like if you're gonna win both belts, you got to defend both belts.
Unless you're gonna come out and literally say that you've
unified them.
You've unified them.
Yeah.
You got to defend both.
That's the gimmick. Like you get the huge rub of winning 2 belts. You've also got to pull double duty now.
I get the feeling she's going to be the MVP of every single pay-per-view leading up to SummerSlam. Where
I actually think
she
might drop one at Money in the Bank. I don't think she should. I really don't think she should.
With the Money in the Bank briefcase being active probably during one of her matches. Because I reckon she's going to open...
Nah, they're not going to Alexa Bliss it again.
I reckon... Oh, don't reckon? Actually, no. I did read something this week. I think it was Meltzer came out and said they're not... They're going to really, really think about who they're giving the belt to. Oh, sorry, the briefcase to, because they feel the last 2 years have been pretty wasted.
No shit. That's we said it last year. It's like when we booked it last week.
We had Baron, and then we had Braun, which was a fucking
and then before that was Cena.
Wasn't even a cash in. It was a I'm cashing in on this day.
Yeah,
and that's no fun.
Oh no, I like it if you win.
But it's Braun Strowman. He can literally go up to anybody and go, "Give me a title shot," and then be like, "Okay, don't eat me."
No, but the Money in the Bank briefcase is inherently a heel kind of thing. When you think about it, right?
It is.
The idea of cashing in on someone after they're so wounded and had a match is heel.
Was CM Punk a heel when he cashed in the second time against Batista? I think he was still a face.
He might have been, but that's the exception.
Yeah,
right?
But that's because Edge came out and absolutely cold-clocked Batista.
Like any face who's won it hasn't really won. I think they've either lost their cash in.
Dean Ambrose. But that was cashing in on Seth. And that was like cathartic as hell.
Yeah, it was cathartic. It was different.
Yeah.
But like I'm talking like RVD doing the late cash in, right? Braun Strowman doing the late cash in.
Cena did one as well.
Cena doing the I'm going to cash it in, right? Like faces that have won, that's their way of attaining that gimmick. It is inherently a heel thing to have.
I know.
Right? So
Explain Baron Corbin then, because he fucked it up royally.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Like Baron Corbin, Braun Strowman, John
royally.
Cena, I'm pretty sure John Cena was within the last 3. Baron... So Braun was the last one, Baron before.
And then Dean before that.
Okay, so that's not 3.
Cena was like 5 years ago.
My bad. But the idea being that like the last 2 have been extremely wasted.
They were saying that. We
year,
need to think about who we're giving it to and have a story in mind before we give them the briefcase.
Yeah. And let it be successful. We said it last week.
Give them the briefcase and then be like, okay, let's see what happens in 6 months.
Yeah.
You've got to fucking plan this out.
Give it to someone who's
the perfect cash-in can make an entire championship run. Look at Seth Rollins.
The cash-in can make a wrestler.
Yeah.
CM Punk.
Yeah. Yeah. The pipe bomb made CM Punk. Let's be
The
honest.
pipe bomb made CM Punk, but CM Punk wouldn't have dropped that pipe bomb if he didn't get the briefcase rubs, bro.
But those two runs he had with the championship after the briefcase cash-in were both pretty lackluster.
Edge,
exactly. Edge cashing in on Cena.
Literally,
like, nothing. As much as I love the Seth Rollins cash-in, nothing will be as perfect as the first cash-in. The first cash-in was immaculate. It was perfectly done. He hands the briefcase to fucking Vince, and Vince is like, "Go make yourself famous," or whatever the fuck he said to him, or something to that effect.
Literally made his career.
And then he had sex on live TV the next week. Fucking fantastic. Beautiful. I will never. That's still my favorite segment on Raw ever. I love it so much.
Dude, the other day was the 12-year anniversary of the 1-hour match between John Cena and Shawn Michaels on Raw.
That's my second.
That has to be one of the greatest matches I've ever fucking seen.
That should have been their WrestleMania match.
Should have been.
Even though,
and it was a week after Mania, wasn't it?
It was.
They had a fucking lackluster Mania match for the WWE title.
It wasn't lackluster. It was
lackluster comparatively.
Fucking good.
And then Shawn gets the W in the hour match.
Yeah, I know. That was in London.
London, baby.
Yeah, they went to because they usually go overseas after Mania.
London.
Yeah. Apparently, like 3 segments got scrapped because they were just like, "Nah, just let him go."
Oh, really?
Apparently, that's what happened.
Oh,
I find that hard to believe.
I find it hard to believe that they, on the call, did an hour-long match. Like, if they're coming out there in their backstage producing,
if anyone can do it, it's fucking Sean.
I know.
Sean can call an hour match.
But what I'm saying is, if they have cut 3 segments,
yeah, I know.
and Sean and John didn't even know they've cut 3 segments, then in their head they're going,
we've
got a 15-minute one here.
I'm sure it would have been communicated.
It would have been communicated while they're in the ring, but before, backstage, they're sitting there going, all right, we've booked out a 15-minute match. You're 15 minutes into your match now, you're looking over at the ref, and the ref's like, I don't know, keep going. Sean's like, fuck me, all right, God. And then he's managed to whip out magic out of his ass.
I'll pull a 4.5-star match out of my ass.
For fucking 40 more minutes.
Yeah. That's the legend. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's the legend.
Fuck.
It makes that match feel a bit bigger, but that match is fucking phenomenal. Anyway, so Raw and SmackDown happened. Firefly's cool. Seth AJ. Okay.
I can't believe they're starting with it, though.
You got to.
Yeah. No, you're hitting the fucking ground running.
Make it big, man. Make it mean something.
We know why they're starting with it. So the big Money in the Bank card happens on a Sunday night. You know what else airs on a Sunday night, apparently, in the States?
Is that going to clash?
You don't think it clashes?
When did I say it was like May 20?
So the final episode of Game of Thrones is on the exact same day as Money in the Bank.
Is it?
Yeah. For us, it is. Yeah.
Oh, fuck.
So and it'll be on the same time. So here in Australia, Monday, 11 a.m., Game of Thrones series finale. 2 hours earlier is Money in the Bank.
I have been watching Thrones on like a 5-hour delay.
I can watch Throne. I can watch. See, now this is the juggle, man. This is the juggle, man. Like, what am I watching on delay that day? I can't watch delayed Game of Thrones on its final episode. But at the same time, well, if the Big O's about to pick up the WWE title of Kofi Kingston, I want to watch that live too.
I've been watching it with my mates because I'm the only one that has Foxtel, and they don't get off work until like 5:30. So they come straight to my place, and we watch it at like 6:30.
Well, that's what I've been doing. That's what I've been doing.
But it's the finale, and
it's the finale, dude.
Twitter is gonna fucking explode.
I mean, the internet's been pretty cool.
It's been pretty good.
It's been pretty cool about it.
Honestly, I haven't seen a single Avengers spoiler on
I haven't
Twitter.
seen a single Avengers spoiler. I haven't seen a single Game of Thrones spoiler at all. It's been 2 weeks. I haven't seen one spoiled. Granted, maybe nothing really drastic has happened aside from spoilers. Are getting the kid off? Thank God.
My God. Okay, we're not going to...
We're a wrestling podcast.
So tempting to talk about Endgame right now as well. It's been literally...
All right, let's cut it here. We're going to talk Endgame.
24 hours. Anyway,
this has been the Straight Mania podcast.
Wait, hang on. Just one more thing. Come on, you piece of shit. I hate this bloody app. Hang on. Give me 2 seconds. I told you I was doing this last week, and I'm doing it. New Japan, Best Super Juniors got announced, and I'm very, very excited about one person in particular, but I'm going to run them down real quick. You got Taguchi, Tiger Mask, Rocky Romero, Sho and Yo, Will Ospreay, fuck yes, Taiji Ishimori, fuck yes, El Desperado, Taka Michinoku, I'm so excited for that, Kanemaru, Bushi, Flip Gordon, Flip, Titan, Marty Skrull, Dragon Lee, Jonathan Gresham, Bandito, who is having the fucking best year of his life, Takagi, and from Australia,
the sniper of the skies,
Robbie fucking Eagles is in best of the Super Juniors.
He's out round 1.
I'm really worried he is too.
He's out round 1. He's out round 1 doing the job to Flip.
Oh, he's not doing the job to Flip. There's no way. Because Flip isn't associated. At least Robbie's in Bullet Club. I think him being associated gets him into round 2.
Who do you think they gave the rub to then? Who wins?
Of that?
Of them all. Because what does the win do? You fight for what?
The win gets you a shot at the title.
Heavyweight?
No, the junior heavyweight.
Oh, the junior heavyweight?
Yeah. Which is currently held by... Who won it?
Kushida? No, not Kushida.
No, Kushida's in NXT. Debuts next week.
Yeah, it's
excited
pretty
as
huge.
hell. Fucking who the fuck won it?
I don't know, man. I don't follow New Japan.
I think Desperado won it at no, Dragon Lee won it at Madison Square Garden. Yeah, he did. Dragon Lee won at Madison Square Garden. All right, so Dragon Lee is in this. If he wins, he gets to choose his opponent. If someone else wins, they get to face him for the junior heavyweight title. Yeah, so I'm keen as hell for this. It's going to kick off, I think, in a couple of weeks. Final is in June, I think. And yeah, last year's final was fucking insane because it was Takahashi versus... Yeah, it was Hiromu versus Taiji Ishimori. My God. I think Meltzer gave it like 5.5.
Oh, of course, Meltzer breaks his own scale
Because of course he
again.
did. But dude, it was a fucking phenomenal...
Bro, just go out of 10, Meltzer.
Dude,
just go out of 10.
At one point, Ishimori Hurricane Rana's Hiromu down a set of concrete stairs. It was beautiful.
You're a fucking mark.
I am a mark because New Japan is fucking awesome. And
You're
that is
fucking mark.
that is a killer lineup. That is like a bunch of dream matches. If we somehow get to a point where we get Will Ospreay versus Robbie Eagles, I'm so keen for that. I'm so keen for that. Anyway, that'll wrap it up. Yeah. Fuck you, Kevin Owens. Please don't ruin the Firefly gimmick. And there's one other thing I wanted to say. Thanks, Eric Bischoff. Cheers.
Cheers.
Appreciate it, man. That was
huge get. No, thank you so much, Bischoff.
This has been the 100th episode. Here's to 100 more.
Here's to 100 more, dude.
Here's to 100 more. Yeah.
It's 100 more weeks.
Yeah, it's less than 2 years.
I was actually thinking about. We'll end with this actually.
Yeah,
And it's just a gimmick. I was listening to our 99th one the other day.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting and I'm thinking like, God, 100 episodes. Like it doesn't really sound like a lot. Like it doesn't sound because there's a lot of things out there that have 200, 300, 400 things, like 400 episodes.
Yeah.
And you sit back and you're like 100 episodes. It doesn't really feel like a lot of episodes. But when you really think about it, if we're doing one a week, that's 100 weeks. Right, that's almost 2 years.
I know. Well, like I mean, this podcast has been the most stop-start thing in the world. So me and Michael started this in 2015. It's been a while.
Well, here we are.
Here we are.
One a week.
We've been pretty good this year so far. Yeah, we've not missed a week
Since coming back from break.
Since we came back from
We've joined Heartifact.
We've got a network now.
We got a network.
Yeah. We got to interview Eric Bischoff.
And we got to interview fucking Eric Bischoff.
That's pretty good.
God, what are we going to do for that 200th?
Eric Bischoff live in studio.
With Vince.
And Vince, yeah. Let's
start the campaign now.
All right, we'll
start the campaign now.
We'll start tweeting it all.
It's either Vince or I want Dwayne.
Dwayne for 200.
Dwayne for 200.
You know what I'd be happy with for 200 episodes? Like, Robbie Eagles or like, you know, Aussie guy who's starting to make it. Buddy Murphy.
Buddy. Actually,
Buddy Murphy.
all right. Fair goal.
Buddy
All
Murphy.
right, we'll get Buddy on.
Yeah,
all
Buddy
right,
Murphy.
all right.
Buddy, if you're listening, please.
We'll send some feelers out.
We
We'll
love
send
you.
some feelers out.
Yeah. I mean, you met him.
You put me over too. But that's neither here nor there.
That's neither here nor there.
That's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
All right.
Enjoy the week in wrestling, guys. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
This is a Heartifact Network podcast. Find us at heartifactstudios.com.au.